So Frank, I hear all the time that, never waste a good crisis, or, we need a burning platform to initiate a significant change program or transformation. So what do you say to leaders who are searching for this burning platform and need a burning platform for change? Do you think it's something that they need, or how do they go about it?
It's an interesting point, really interesting point. And need is an important verb there. The problem with relying on, my own view, in my own corporate career, I didn't have to create any artificial burning platforms. There's plenty of them around. To me, it's more a case of commercial education, where to help all the employees understand the realities of capitalism, if you like, both the need for capital, the need for investment, the need for everything else, and how difficult it is to actually design, manufacture, and sell products in competitive markets. And if a workforce genuinely understands that, and consensus day is a massive way of doing that in rapid mass engagement terms. If you imagine all the people in the organisation, all elected by their peers from every function, talking about all the issues and producing a change plan in one day, sometimes 2 days, if it runs over. If the workforce understands all that stuff and is committed and own the plan going forward, and they understand why everything fits together, all the dots are joined together. Key point in leadership, a key aspect of leadership is not just to model the behaviours, but also to reference them, meaning join all the dots together. We're doing this because of this is connected to that.
So the art of storytelling.
Storytelling is a very important part of that. But simply from a systems thinking point of view, the connection of different things together. I mean, we're talking about the Sunday Times business front page yesterday, and in the UK, and two major issues in the UK economy directly caused by the unintended consequences of politicians, the current government in the UK, making decisions and not understanding how supply chains work in one case, and how controlling absence is very important for retail business or anyone else in the other. But two pieces of intervention by politicians into the economy which have destroyed thousands of jobs. So if people understand not to do that, and we as a company can't do that, we have to do the things that create jobs, that create good customer experience, that add value to society through what we do. They understand the mechanics of that and how it all fits together. Then you don't need to artificially generate stuff. And if employees believe that you're hyping things and you're artificially hyping them, then you lose the trust of the workforce, which is very easily lost and very hard gain. The reason for we're all the heavy emphasis in the early workshops in authenticity is to gradually build trust right through the process. So the other from a psychological point of view, if you're looking at it psychologically, I always argue that motivation towards is more sustainable than motivation away from.
Explain that a bit more.
So motivation towards a higher purpose.
Yes.
So a future for our family and friends in the West, that we discussed in another discussion. If people are reached genuinely at an emotional level that's not usual in work, and they're connected to their families, to their communities, whatever.
So you're tapping into people's beliefs.
Beliefs and genuine. It's not just about profit. Profit is red blood cells, but it's not why we live. It's not about corporate stuff. Obviously, we have to deliver to the corporation like we have to deliver to the customer and the consumer, depending on the organisation. And when people understand that and they genuinely believe in what the organisation is trying to do, and they have created a plan to get there, And they've made...
They've literally skin in the game.
Yeah, massive stuff. And it's not just them. Sometimes people will say, oh, I'm too old, yeah, for this sort of stuff. I get that a lot in the early workshops. And I will often say to them, how old are your kids?
Mm.
Do they live in this area? What about their kids? And it's not all about you. It's about what you can leave behind. And if you think of it in terms of the planet as well, then what every generation wants to make life easier for their children than for themselves.
Yes.
And that's the same principle, that we are going to work on something and leave it in a better shape.
Yeah.
So it's not about all about us. It obviously affects us big style, but there are the opportunities for promotion and jobs and advancement. All that is massive, particularly for groups of people who've not been considered for management jobs in the past. You know, people without degrees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, why we think leaders have to have degrees, I don't know. I'm not against universities, but it's not an essential. You can be a superb leader without a degree. Mm-hmm. And if the organisation needs technical excellence as well, we can add that afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of this motivation towards those values, towards those ideals of why we're here and what we're trying to do and how we're going to manifest that in work every single day. Mm. That is motivation towards.
It is, but it can be a scary proposition for a leader. To blow open the doors of, I suppose, giving that control or ownership to the workforce.
Yeah, the leaders have control of parts of the process. So, for example, whether to do rapid mass engagement is a decision by the senior team. Considering the alternatives to rapid mass engagement, because there's different ways of doing it, and also there's different ways of doing parts of it as well. Although there's downsides to there's certainly some optimization with partial implementation, but these are options depending on the diagnosis and depending on where the senior team is
and the system by which they're trying to optimize.
Yeah. Now, if you're in monopoly, you won't need to be as good as if you're in a highly competitive market. So the reality that the organisation in matters. If you're facing closure, you're going to have to be bloody good, and you're going to have to be bloody good quickly. So that burning platform does help. And so there's not a black and white answer to that question. If there's no threat, and it's an issue in the public sector, if there's no threat to jobs, if jobs are guaranteed, if pensions are guaranteed, if everything is guaranteed, the human temptation is to not try things that are risky. Because, as a senior civil servant said to me once, your career gets destroyed by taking risks, and your career gets enhanced by doing as little as possible.
Playing it safe.
Yeah, playing it very, very safe. So I can understand people saying, I need to generate some degree of clearly massive amounts of accountability, but it's harder, for example, in the public sector than in the competitive private sector. And it's harder in monopolies and oligopolies than in more competitive sectors. And it's harder in sectors with high margins than it is in sectors with low margins. So retail has large sales, relatively low margins. Now, that sector means that you have to be very good all the time. Your success depends on what all of your employees are doing every day with every customer walking in there. So the level of employee engagement that is created and the amount of employee enablement to enable all that passion and commitment and ownership to actually make improvements, those things are crucial. If you're in a highly elite hedge fund, the number of employees that make a massive difference are the people who decide what to invest in and what to do with the people who invest. Now, the people in the office doing the admin and everything else may have very little to do with the success of the organisation. So there's a whole lot of situational, unique positions that in individual organisations. You mentioned in another conversation about small SMEs. The real advantage of size, smallness, is you can achieve an incredible amount very, very quickly. And you can do it directly. Everybody can be in the room at once.
Yes.
With very small organisations, like ICBF in Cork, for example. But the disadvantage is there's a small number of people with a lot of knowledge that's in their head that's not in the organisation. It's not being systematised. So what happens when you grow, when the organisation grows beyond the capabilities of the founders, when the organisation grows more complex, and it's not a single system anymore, it's a series of subsystems, all of which have to be sustainable and viable, and maybe across countries and all sorts of things.
So, and then it's characterised as growing pains, and it's
it's absolutely predictable and preventable. That's the key thing. So when I spoke to you before about the early stage of having mass engagement with the discussion with the senior team about what you're trying to achieve, where are you now, what the gap is, how you close the gap. And that conversation is unique to each individual organisation. Even within the same organisation, the 3 rapid mass engagements in Rolls-Royce, for example, were very different from each other.
Yes.
So
there's no kind of cookie cutter approach.
Yes. I make a distinction between skeleton and flesh. So skeleton is the fundamental design architecture of the system, that you don't muck about with that, because if you take the spine out, the arms are not going to work. That's not an improvement, that's destroying the system. On the other hand, flesh is when I try and facilitate this, for example, their local stories, their local experience, their particular style and approach, that is differentiation again. And that's valuable. So if you can combine the, if you like, scientific rigour of the design and the structure with the maximisation of solution space, the flesh, if you can get that sweet spot between differentiation and integration, then that's where everything starts to multiply and leverage, etc. But each organisation's journey to that, and each individual unit of each organisation, what I mean by that is, for example, Dupree wouldn't be the same as another Johnson & Johnson plant.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and now it's in a different company anyway. But it's built locally, and it's differentiated locally. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all, and that is consistent with maximum solution space. Because if you can drive decisions, real decisions, not playing at it, lower and lower in the organisation, where that particular expertise is, not all expertise. You don't have a rapid mass engagement and ask people what the new product development strategy should be for the next 10 years. That's a highly specialised, knowledge-based scientific exercise, not suitable for this. So don't engage people on things they're not expert at. But people are expert at their own job, and they're more expert at it than we are, further detached from them. And the more senior we are, the more detached we become, and that should lead us to be more humble rather than more arrogant.